John Harbaugh scheduled 10 practices in 11 days, and he knew before he wrote it down what it was going to cost him. That schedule comes from Dan Duggan at The Athletic, who pointed out that Brian Daboll never ran more than 3 straight practices in his 4 years in charge here. Harbaugh ran 10 in 11 days in the mountains of West Virginia. 7 of them came in full pads. On one Wednesday in the heat at the Greenbrier, the Giants ran over 100 live plays. Now hold that next to the other thing happening at this camp. The New York Giants finished 4-13 last season. Across the 2 years before Harbaugh walked in, they went 7-27. And of every group on this roster, the one with the least proven depth, the least margin, and the most riding on it is cornerback. So why does a head coach with 180 regular season wins run the hardest camp of his career in the exact year his roster has the least room to absorb one? I think about that question every time I read a practice report out of East Rutherford. Because on Friday, going into the preseason opener against Minnesota, the Giants were missing Paulson Adebo, Drew Phillips, Greg Newsome II, and DJ James. That is 4 cornerbacks. If they had to line up for a real game right then, the outside corners would be Deonte Banks and a rookie named Colton Hood. None of those injuries are being described as long-term, and I want to be fair about that. Knee sprains in August are the most ordinary thing in football. But you do not need a season-ending injury to lose a training camp. You just need the reps to go somewhere else. And the reps have been going somewhere else for 2 straight weeks at the one position where this team had no answers to begin with. And Harbaugh has not slowed down. Not a single day. Practice 14, the last full session before the Vikings game, ran the maximum length the collective bargaining agreement allows. 4 corners out, and he still took every minute the rules gave him. I want to be careful how I say this next part because it would be easy to turn it into a cheap shot, and it does not deserve one. 3 days before that practice, the Giants brought a free agent cornerback into the building. He is 23 years old, he was a first-round pick 2 years ago, and he is currently facing 8 felony charges. The Detroit Lions released him in June. Harbaugh stood in front of the New York media afterward and made it very clear he wanted him. Hold on to that. We are going to come back to it, and where it ends up is not where you think. There is one more thing I keep turning over. In a camp where a 6-time Pro Bowler called it the hardest of his career, there is exactly one player Harbaugh has refused to grind. Malik Neighbors has been in a red jersey. He took part in 9 of the 10 practices in West Virginia, and he has barely seen full team work since. The most physical coach this franchise has hired in 20 years is treating one man like glass. So here is what I actually want to figure out, and it is not whether this camp is too hard. Plenty of people are asking that question, and I do not think it is the interesting one. The interesting one is this. What did John Harbaugh see on the 2025 tape that convinced him this was the only fix available and that it was worth paying for in September? Start with the first day in pads, because it tells you more than the highlight clips do. The Giants put the pads on for the first time under Harbaugh at the Greenbrier, with a thunderstorm sitting in the forecast. What came out of it was 14 penalties. Harbaugh downplayed it afterward, said it was the first day in pads and the weather was a factor. I understand why a coach says that in August. I also think he did not believe it. Most of those 14 were pre-snap penalties, and a false start does not care about humidity. A false start is a man who does not know the count. Here's the number that reframes the whole thing. In 2025, the Giants finished with the second most pre-snap penalties on offense in the National Football League, 41 of them. That is not a talent problem. You cannot draft your way out of it, and you cannot sign your way out of it in March. The only mechanism that has ever fixed it is volume, and volume in August is exactly what 10 practices in 11 days buys you. There is a second number from last year that runs on the same track. The 2025 Giants allowed opponents an average of 5.2 yards per play before anybody got a hand on the ball carrier. That is a tackling number, and tackling is the one skill in football you cannot rehearse without contact. So the question is not really why Harbaugh is running a hard camp. The question is which players he has already decided he is willing to lose to get the other 50 right. That brings me to the Wednesday in the mountains. The Giants ran over 100 live plays in the heat that day, and afterward, the quotes coming out of that locker room were remarkable for what they were not. Nobody complained. Patrick Ricard called it his toughest training camp in 10 years, and Ricard is a 6-time Pro Bowler who spent 9 seasons in Baltimore. He followed Harbaugh here on purpose. Guard John Runyon said it reminded him of his 5 years under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And Greg Newsome II, who is now one of the corners on the side with a knee, described it this way: "Man, it's tough, gritty, we're going to work, and I like that." I keep coming back to that quote in particular. The player paying the highest price for this camp is the one selling it hardest. Either that is a locker room that has genuinely bought in, or it is August and everybody says the right thing in August. I do not think you get to know which one it is until about week 6. And I think there is a reason nobody complained. Harbaugh did not arrive alone. Isaiah Likely, Jordan Stout, Ardarius Washington, and Ricard all followed him here from Baltimore, and so did Chris Horton, who spent 12 seasons running special teams for the Ravens and now holds the same job in New Jersey. Stout was a first-team All-Pro last season and led the NFL in net punting at 44.9 yards. None of those men walked into this camp and got surprised by it. They walked in already knowing exactly what it was, and they set the temperature for everybody who did not. And I do want to give the other side of this ledger its due, because there is one, and right now it is standing in the middle of that defense at 6'4" and 241 pounds. Arvell Reese went 5th overall out of Ohio State. He is 20 years old. The Giants are playing him at off-ball linebacker next to Tremaine Edmonds rather than turning him loose off the edge, which is a harder ask for a rookie and a slower road to statistics. He has not looked slow at any of it. Jordan Raanan of ESPN described an interception Reese made in a red zone period, where he got a hand on a pass headed for the front pylon, the ball came off the back of his hand into the air, and Reese tipped it to himself. Raanan called him a star at camp and an absolute freak of an athlete. Dennard Wilson, the defensive coordinator, went further, and I think what he said matters more than the highlight does. He said Reese has picked up everything: the defensive structure, the calls, the adjustments. Peter Schrager put it in the language people will actually repeat, telling the Pat McAfee show that Reese looks like RoboCop. I bring this up because it is the entry on the other side of the ledger. You do not find out in July that a 20-year-old can absorb an entire NFL defensive structure by going easy on him in July. The reps that are costing this team 4 cornerbacks are the same reps that produced that. So the question sharpens again, not whether the trade is worth it in the abstract, but whether Harbaugh has any way of knowing in advance which players survive a camp like this and which ones break in it. I do not think he does. I think he made a bet about the ratio, and I think he made it back in the spring. Harbaugh has been asked directly how far he intends to push. Back in minicamp, he answered with a question of his own, asking whether there was a rating scale, and then he set the ceiling himself. Vince Lombardi is a 10, he said, and this would not be Lombardi. He also told Big Blue View something I found more revealing than any of it. We're not in a hurry to get off the field. We're in a hurry to get things right. I read that as a man who has already decided the clock does not get a vote, which is exactly the mindset that produced August 12th. That Wednesday, Terry and Arnold worked out at the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. Arnold was the 24th pick of the 2024 draft. He is out on bond awaiting trial on 8 felony counts of armed robbery and kidnapping stemming from an incident in Florida in February. The Lions released him on June 29th. 2 men have already been imprisoned in connection with the case. Harbaugh spoke afterward and did not hedge. We want to be aggressive in every way. Whatever we can do, find anything out we can about any situation or player that can help us be better. The margins are tight in the NFL. We're looking for players that can help us all the time. He's a player that can help us. Then he added a line that most of the coverage skipped. He said the organization had looked at it in depth, and that if there was a decision to be made on a player this organization did not want to go there with, it would not go there. Read those two things together, and you get a coach making the football case as loudly as he possibly can while leaving the moral one to the builder. That is not a man who is undecided. That is a man lobbying. 2 days later, Arnold signed a 1-year deal with Seattle. Adam Schefter reported it. Ian Rappaport confirmed the terms. The Giants never had to make the call. And I think that is the single most useful thing that happened at this camp, because it means we still do not know the answer. We know what Harbaugh wanted. We do not know what Joe Schoen and this ownership group would have allowed. The video every other channel made about this story was published before the story ended, and their conclusion is now sitting there being wrong. So the sharper version of the question is not whether the Giants should have signed him. It is what it tells you about a coach that he pushed this hard, this publicly, for a stopgap corner, 32 days before a season opener. I think it tells you he does not believe he has time. Let me argue the other side, because it deserves better than a wave. The case against everything I have just said is simple. Camps get banged up in August. Every camp. Adebo, Phillips, Newsome, and James are all being described as short-term. None of them are on injured reserve. And if all 4 are on the field on September 13th, then this entire conversation evaporates, and I look like a man who overread 2 weeks of practice reports. That is a real possibility, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. There is a second objection that lands harder. Harbaugh has done this for 18 years. He went 180 and 113 in Baltimore. If anybody in this sport has earned the benefit of the doubt on how to run in August, it is him. And the idea that a first-time observer watching from outside the fence has spotted a flaw he missed is a little ridiculous when you say it plainly. Here is where I land anyway. I do not think Harbaugh is miscalculating. I think he has correctly identified that this roster's problem was never a shortage of ability. It was 41 pre-snap penalties and 5.2 yards before contact, and both of those are habits. Habits only break under volume. He has 1 season to convert a 7-27 franchise into something the building believes in, and he decided in July that he would rather arrive at week 1 with a tired, bruised, disciplined football team than a fresh and sloppy one. The cost is real, and he priced it in. That is what the Arnold workout was. It was not desperation. It was a coach who knew in advance that the corner room was going to take damage and went looking for a replacement part before he needed it. And Malik Neighbors is the proof of the whole theory. In a camp where a 6-time Pro Bowler says he has never worked harder, Harbaugh has kept the one irreplaceable player in a red jersey. 9 of 10 practices, almost no team reps. He is not indiscriminate. He knows exactly what he is willing to spend and exactly what he refuses to. So go back to that number I opened with. 10 practices in 11 days. That was not enthusiasm, and it was not a first-year head coach overcorrecting. That was a decision made by somebody who read the 2025 tape, understood what it would take, and accepted the bill in advance. I said at the top that 4 corners are on the sideline this week. The best rookie in this draft class is playing inside linebacker like he has been here 5 years. Everybody else is sore. All 3 of those things are the same sentence. John Harbaugh is breaking the Giants on purpose, and he already knows what it costs him.